Hey class, it's Diamante.
Khalid.
Denise.
Today our topic is medieval clothing. I will start it off with the medieval clothing fabrics. The type of cloth and fabric used for medieval clothing was as follows. They used wool, linen, and sheepskin for the lower class. Medieval nobility's upper class wore velvet, furs, silk, linen, and cotton. Knights who were coming from the Crusades had silk. Velvet was imported from Italy. They had dyes that were expensive. For an example, red came from the Mediterranean, and it was an insect which provided a bright scarlet color. Green dyes came from lynching. The dyer's wood plant provided dyes for the remaining blue-based colors.
In the Middle Ages, the clothing for the noble woman was very fancy. The noble woman wore many layers of clothes to keep warm. They wore long silky dresses that were red and purple to show how wealthy they were. Only royalty were allowed to wear red or purple clothes. Their main dress was called a kirtle. They had long pointy sleeves with hoops at the end, which they attached to their middle finger to keep the sleeves down.
Sorry about that. I'm going to be talking about knights and becoming a knight. There were only a few ways in which a person could become a knight. The first way was the normal course of action for the son of a noble. They usually began at the age of 8, and they had many responsibilities. They wore armor that was made out of metal to protect their body, which looked like this. They also wore pads so like they could be comfortable, and for it to help ease the weight. They were called gambesons, and they look like this. They had two things so they could shield, and it either looked like the one that Monty is holding, or a circular one like this. And they also had a face mask to protect them, and it was worn during the Crusades. And they also used a knife. And that was pretty much it about the knights.
Okay. Medieval ages clothing and fashion included the medieval peasant clothing. Like everything else was dedicated by the pyramid of power, which was the Middle Ages federal system. Medieval clothing provided information about the status of a person. Medieval peasant clothing. The medieval peasant clothing was based and practical. The dress of a man in the lowest ranks of society was almost short and tight, consisting of breeches or tights, drawers mostly made of leather, of tight tunics or doublets, and of capes or cloaks, of course, brown woolen. The tunic was confined at the waist by a belt to which the knife was attached to, and if the man had a purse. And sometimes the working tool was suspended. A medieval serf clothing or dress consists of a blouse of cloth or skin fastened by a leather belt round the waist, an overcoat or a mantle thick of woolen material which fell from the shoulders halfway down to the legs, also known as a windbreaker, we call it this day. Shoes or large boots. Gloves were worn only for when he was doing jobs such as hedging. I have two pictures here of a peasant man, and this is a peasant lady. Medieval serfs generally went bareheaded, but in the cold or in the rain he wore a woolen hat. The simple cap was made of thick, coarse woolen cloth. In the early Middle Ages, caps were also made of felt or sheepskins. During the 12th century, a person's rank or a social position was determined by the headdress.
medieval clothing of the nobleman consisted of trousers covered with long over tunics.
Such as
The indoor shoes worn with medieval clothing were covered with wooden and leather outdoor overshoes. Hats were also parts of nobles' clothing, which were similar to a cap and pointed at the front. The materials were made of velvets, silks, lace, cottons, and taffeta. They dyed in bright colors. In the 14th century, medieval clothing included underclothes consisting of breeches, chemise, and hose.
This will conclude the our project about medieval clothing.
Any other questions after you have seen this?
Hit me up on Facebook.
You can ask us questions. Signing out of here is Diamante.
Khalid.
Denise.
See you.